When you're buying a house, one of the most important parts of the entire process is the showing. Everything hinges on that first walkthrough, and how you approach it can be the difference between building a future for yourself and ending up completely broke. The most expensive part of buying a home isn't the down payment, it's what you miss during the showing. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down what you should be looking for and how to spot every flaw that the sellers hope that you won't see. My name is Steve LoPresti. I'm a real estate agent here in Hamilton, Ontario, and I help first-time buyers just like you every week to buy their first home the right way. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out at any time. My contact info is down in the description. Now, if you've never done a home showing before, or it's been a while since you've last done one, it's not always obvious what you should be looking for when you're going through the place. In this video, I'm going to give you a list of 10 key things that you're going to want to keep in mind when you are looking at homes in Hamilton. And because this is specific to Hamilton, I'll also point out a few local red flags you're going to want to know about as well. Now, before we get into the list, there's one thing I want to say really quickly before we get into it. I know, more rambling, I know, but bear with me, it's going to be important. Buying your first home is exciting. You walk through the door, the light's pouring in, the floors are gleaming, the place is beautiful, and sometimes it can even feel like love at first sight. And that's awesome. That's exactly the experience that you want to be having when you're buying your first home, but it's also where a lot of first-time buyers get tripped up. Because when a home looks perfect, it's easy to overlook things that maybe are less than perfect. Now, that being said, this isn't about nitpicking every small little detail or every tiny flaw that you find with the home. It's just about understanding which problems are worth dealing with and which ones are not. So the goal here is simple. Just keep your eyes open. Make sure that you enjoy the process, but you're also paying attention to the details. With that being said, let's start where most problems in a home start, and that is with the foundation. This is the most important element of your home, and it's the first thing you're going to want to check because it's literally what the home is built on. You're going to want to head on down to the basement and start poking around a bit. You're going to want to look for primarily cracks in the walls, some that are horizontal, those stair step looking ones. It's like the photo up on the screen there. Another thing you're going to want to keep an eye out for is efflorescence, which is just a fancy word for that salty looking white powder that you'll see on the walls. That's just a sign that there's some water damage, or sorry, not water damage, water leaking coming through. You also want to keep an eye out around the basement windows because that is where most likely any water is going to come in if there is any water leaking. So look for recently replaced windows and look at the area around it, anything that's just generally suspicious. And then you want to look at any signs of patching or freshly painted areas, maybe a suspicious rug right in the center of the floor near the wall and with nothing else around it. Little things like that that just might be a little bit worth checking into. Because foundation problems are not a cheap fix and they never go away on their own. So that's why you want to prioritize looking at that. Those will be the hardest issues to fix, and they will be most likely the most expensive ones that you have to fix as well. You don't want to just keep your eyes open. You want to keep your nose open as well. So the next thing you're going to want to keep an eye out for as you're going through the entire house, but also specifically in the basement, is any funny smells and any signs of moisture. Hamilton has no shortage of homes with moisture damage, especially in the lower city. So walk around, smell the place a little bit. Now, you don't have to look in any specific spots for this. Like, don't be a weirdo and stick your face under the couch. That's also kind of gross. But just as you're going through the house, just keep your nose open, try to see if there's any smells. And sometimes if you smell a very heavy air freshener, that could be perhaps a red flag that they're trying to mask something. You also want to keep an eye out for any water stains on the ceiling and look for signs that they might have been painted over, especially if you're directly below a bathroom. If you're on the first floor and there's a bathroom right above you, you're going to want to keep an eye out on those areas because they're the most susceptible to having some leaks. All right, the next thing that you're going to want to keep an eye out for is the electrical panel and the wiring in the house. This is something that most buyers just walk right past, but it's a big deal when it comes to both insurance and just general safety. So what you want to look for is you want to look for the electrical panel. It's typically in the basement, but if not, you might have to hunt around a little bit. They can sometimes be hidden or not the easiest to find. You want to look at, is it a modern electrical panel? Does it have modern breakers, or is it an old fuse box? Now, what you don't want to see is knob and tube wiring. It would kind of look like this. This is going to be an insurance nightmare. You're going to have to replace the whole thing. Otherwise, you won't be able to get any home insurance on the house. And again, it's also a safety issue. And then as you're going through the house, you want to just keep an eye out for any electrical work that looks like it was DIY. It might have been a little sloppily thrown together. They didn't actually hire a professional to to do it, they just did it themselves because, you know, everybody's trying to save money. So you want to keep an eye out for that. Again, it might be an issue when it comes to getting insurance, and again, just general safeties. I don't really like house fires, and I'm sure you don't either. There's a lot of the older neighborhoods in Hamilton like Beasley, Stinson, and St. Clair that knob and tube wiring is still surprisingly common. So you do want to make sure that you are checking for that and just budgeting it into your overall budget when you're looking at buying a house. It's not completely off the table, but it is a fairly expensive fix. So you want to keep that in mind. All right, next thing is your furnace and your air conditioning. The heating and cooling systems are one of the most expensive mechanical systems in the home, and that can be expensive to replace them. You want to look for the installation date of the furnace. There's usually a sticker or a stamped tag on it, and if not, you can find out from the seller how old the furnace is. If the furnace is more than 20 years old, then the AC looks like it came out of a different century, then you're going to want to prepare to be paying for a new one relatively soon. All right, next up, you got your windows and your doors. And these don't just look nice, they also will help with your energy efficiency as well as security. So as you're going through the house, just try opening a few of the windows, make sure they actually open, they don't stick. And if you see some fogging in between the window panes, that's typically a sign that the seals are broken and that the windows are going to have to be replaced. And then you just want to check for any drafts around the doors and the window frames. Again, that just might show that there's a seal broken somewhere and they're going to have to be replaced. So you want to take that into account. It's not the end of the world to have to replace windows, but if you have to do them all at the same time, it can be a pretty hefty bill. Now, if you're finding this list helpful and you want something that you can bring with you to your showings, I've put together a resource just for first-time buyers. It's called the First-Time Homebuyer Survival Guide, and it breaks down everything you need to know, not only with your showings, but also how to budget for your first home purchase, how to make offers that don't leave you riddled with anxiety, and how to avoid the most common mistakes that first-time buyers make. So if you're interested in that, again, it's totally free. Check out the link in the description. All right, the next thing that you're going to want to check when you're looking at a house is the water pressure and the plumbing. Now, I don't mean you actually get down on your hands and knees and start inspecting the back of the toilet, but you do want to do a quick water pressure test. So what I like to always do is get a couple of the sinks running and then flush one of the toilets and then see, is there any interruption in the water flow? So by doing this, you're checking for weak water pressure and inconsistent flow. This is especially common in areas like Homeside, Normanhurst, and Crown Point, where a lot of the plumbing hasn't been fully updated yet. So if it feels like the house is struggling to deliver more than one stream of water at the same time, that could be a red flag. So if you have a big family and there's going to be multiple people like doing dishes, showering, doing a bunch of stuff at the same time, that might be an issue for you. If you live alone or there's only one or two people max, then maybe not as much of a problem, but you do want to keep that in mind when you're looking at this. The next thing you want to inspect is the lot grading, the gutters, and the water damage around the exterior of the house. The outside of the house matters just as much as the inside. So what you want to do is you want to take a walk around the exterior of the house, look at the foundation like we did before when you were in the basement. You want to look for any cracks that you see. You also want to look at the eaves troughs. Are they pointing water away from the house? Does the land slope towards the house or does it slope away from the house? And is there any puddling or soggy soil near the foundation? Just look generally how the land slopes and is the water being properly directed away from the house, because water will always find its way downhill, and that's not a good sign when downhill is your basement. This is an often overlooked aspect in some older urban lots or homes with a raised deck where you can't quite see underneath. The next thing you want to keep an eye out for is the parking situation at the house. Now, this might not seem like the biggest deal or necessarily the biggest red flag when it comes to a home, but especially in some areas like Hamilton, this can be a huge deal breaker. One of the things that you want to keep an eye out for is mutual driveways. So that's a driveway where it's just shared with a neighbor. Maybe it goes out into your backyard, but then you have one shared exit way as you come out, or it could just be the entire driveway itself is shared. This means that you're going to have to coordinate with your neighbor anytime any one of you wants to use the driveway, which can work great until it doesn't. You get one passive aggressive note later and suddenly you're in a full out Cold War over a Toyota Corolla. So you want to make sure that the parking that you have is private, or at least that you fully understand what the parking situation is like. You also want to make sure the parking that you have is actually legal. It's recognized by the city as a parking space and it wasn't something that was created by the current owner of the house but won't actually fall under the building bylaws. You also want to look at how the parking is going to work in the wintertime. Will it be functional or will it be completely blocked in when the plows come by? And then you want to look at your guest parking as well. Can they park nearby or will they need a permit if people come to visit? Especially in some areas of downtown Hamilton, parking is pretty tight and there are some restrictions that apply based on the time of the year, overnight restrictions, that sort of thing. So you do want to make sure that you know exactly what you're getting yourself into with the parking situation. The next thing that you want to look at when you're doing a home showing is the neighborhood itself, because you're not just buying a house, you're buying the street that it's on. So no matter how nice the inside of the home looks, if the street is looking sketchy and run down, you're gonna have a bad time. So this is what I always recommend that buyers do. Don't just tour the house, tour the neighborhood. Take a walk down the street, go around the block, and try to get an idea of what's going on that street. How do the other homes look? What's the curb appeal like? Do they look like they're well maintained, or do they look like they're completely run down and you should be running for the hills? And then ideally, if you're seriously considering buying a house, try to revisit it at different times of the day. Try to come at nighttime, maybe around noon, maybe in the morning, just so you have an idea of what it's like the entire time throughout the day. This is just so that you get the most well-rounded idea of that street possible, so you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. Now, the last thing that you want to keep in mind when you're doing a home showing is not what to look out for, but rather what to ignore. Let's be real, when you're walking into a showing, there's a lot to take in. You want to keep in mind that the sellers have positioned the home to perfectly highlight all its best features and to minimize its worst ones. So what you want to avoid is the perfectly staged furniture, the finishes, the paint job, stuff like that, mostly cosmetic stuff that doesn't matter at all. None of that stuff is coming with the house anyways, or it's a very easy fix. Any cosmetic upgrades like your paint, your cabinets, your countertops, even your flooring, they're all relatively cheap to fix. When you compare that to something like the foundation, the furnace, the roof, all the windows, those are a lot more expensive to deal with. So to sum it all up, quick rule of thumb, cosmetic equals cheap, structural equals costly. Focus on structural red flags. Don't worry about the cosmetic red flags. You can fix those anyways. And in some cases, those might even help you out a lot more because you can buy the house at a discount, do the upgrades yourself, and save the money that way. And you've also forced the value of the property to go up, which is going to help your resale value later on. All right, so there you have it. Those were 10 things to keep an eye on when you're doing a showing in Hamilton. Now, the point of this is not to become a home inspector. You're not supposed to find every single flaw with a house, and in fact, you're not going to find every single flaw with a house. That is why you put in a home inspection condition when you put in an offer to buy the home. Let your home inspector come in, let them do their job, and let them point out all the little flaws that you missed. The point of doing this during the showing is not to do the home inspector's job for them. It's just to spot any obvious red flags that are deal breakers from the beginning before you invest any more time or money into this house. All right, if you found this video helpful, don't forget to grab your free copy of the First-Time Homebuyer Survival Guide. It's down in the description. And if you're ready to buy your first home in Hamilton or you've already started looking, feel free to reach out to me. You can book a free call with me using the link in the description, and I'd love to walk you through the entire process and help you figure out how to find the right home for you. I work with tons of buyers. I help a bunch of people every week buy their first home, and I'd love to help you do the same. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. You can hit that button over there with that handsome guy's face on it to subscribe, and then you can check out this video over here for some more Hamilton real estate tips. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.